Hello and welcome back to Wisdom Talks. Today's topic of conversation is creating a culture of openness, which we can use in the workplace with employees, but also actually at home as well. Today, again, I've got Steven Mallows with me. Hello, Steven.
Hello.
And as you know, we're talking about openness, and I think that, my background is employment law and HR, and I speak openly, oh, that's coincidental, but I speak quite a lot about openness within the workplace and connecting with your staff to get the most out of them. What tips have you got?
So it's just all about raising that comfort level, as it were, to encourage your staff to essentially be able to come to you with whatever it is that's going on there. And you create that, by developing that level of safety.
And it's creating that so that they're comfortable. So if they've got an issue at home, issue within the workplace, that they're able to trust you as well and go to you confidentially and speak about issues that are bothering them or troubling them at home. And we know, don't we, that actually if we're talking about the workplace, I spend, for me, and always have, I spent more time awake at work, except for the odd time when I have dropped off, but awake at work than I do at home, So you want to get on with everybody, you want to be comfortable with everybody, you want to enjoy coming to work, and you want to be able to speak up and open up about things that are troubling you that might impact on the workplace.
Definitely. And, I would go as far as saying there are, several things that actually overlap that in the counselling world as well. There's a theory developed by a gentleman called Carl Rogers, and he developed these core conditions that were taught to me when I was training to become a therapist, and they are about maintaining that idea of empathy. Of course, empathy is so important. We do have to be able to just feel what people are feeling and connect with them in that way as well. The idea then as well of unconditional positive regard, to see a person for who they are at that moment in time, without having a prejudgment or anything like that. And I think that's so important in the workplace as well, for people to not have that prejudgment of what people look like, where their background is, because you're all in that job together, and that's something to bear in mind as well. And then the other one is congruency, to practice that idea of honesty to yourself.
Say that again, it's
congruency.
Oh, right, I've not heard of that. Explain what that means.
So it's all about creating that level of honesty, being congruent to yourself, being honest to who you are. And that works both ways here. So it works with the person that wants to open up to the person that is receiving, whatever it is that is for that person there. And understanding that both have to present that idea of congruency to ensure that there is a comfort level there, being sure that they're both able to sit with that, as it were.
When we talk about the openness and how if I was an employer and I want to open up to staff, I want staff to open up to me and trust me, what skills would I need for that, or what techniques should I teach myself?
Of course. No, I mean, active listening is always a really good one there, to really truly sit with that person and actively listen, the eye contact, the what you're doing there, the yes, the nodding and that sort of thing there makes me feel heard in this space here. And that's exactly the same way that employers can indeed respond to their staff when they are indeed talking.
What I do say when I'm talking about, trying to engage with your staff and get the best out of them, I'm a true believer in giving everybody my time, and my time is precious. I give everybody the time of day. Sometimes it's detrimental to me, but I give people the time of day and I listen. And I think if somebody's trying to open up to you, I think it's really important not to have your phone on the table. It's important to not be disturbed, to really give them the impression that actually you are giving them the time and you're spending time and you've thought about this. And if you are in HR, you hear a lot of problems that people are having at home and personal issues as well. So it's a lot to take on board as well, isn't it? So how would somebody deal with that if they're hearing, quite sad things and they feel emotional and they're showing that empathy and they're listening? How would they deal with that?
Of course. I mean, it works very similarly to how counsellors work. As an ethical requirement, we have supervisors, so essentially a counsellor's counsellor. So if we've heard some troubling aspects that is really sitting with us and, maybe we've shown that empathy, we've really sat with that person, for example, then it can be something for us to hold. And therefore we go to supervision to offload that onto another person. And then the cycle continues beyond that. And I would always advise people, if they are holding on to an awful lot from what they've heard from other people, to disclose that to someone that they trust, as it were, to keep that sort of loop continually going.
Okay, so in the workplace, if and outside of the workplace, we hear something and somebody's disclosed something to us personally, do you then, you've obviously listened, you've shown empathy, but then do you pinpoint them to certain people like, healthy, the helpline?
Yeah, of course. If the service has an EAP, of course, that's a recommendation as well. Occupational health could also be another good one, dependent on, the circumstances, of course. And, to maybe advise them to speak to a professional, perhaps, regardless of whether that is through private services or through other beats as well.
Have you got any examples of somebody you might, and I'm not expecting you to name names, but an example of something where somebody's phoned you up and you've listened, that you've got them to be open, and then you've referred them somewhere?
Of course. So as an EAP service, we obviously practice a model of therapy, solution-focused therapy, and at times, that's a very good beneficial format of therapy, but in other times, it's sometimes in need of the person to maybe seek some more intense style of therapy, whether that be about trauma-focused CBT or EMDR, for example. And, so it's always a suggestion from myself to maybe seek that from services that would provide that level of support, given that I've heard them and I'm aware that, they may not sit right with the solution-focused approach, for example. It could be that they would benefit from something more intense, as it were.
I think, there's a lot of people, especially earlier on in the year and towards the end of the year, and getting Christmas out of the way, coming to Easter or whatever, they still have debt. And I think that probably that's the one thing that people don't talk about is money, because there's such a taboo. I'd rather have a friend that turned around and said, look, I think my card's going to decline, than somebody who tries to be something they're not. I'd rather they just were honest about their situation. And I think it's something that needs to be spoken about more than it is. And we also have people that, so money's an issue, but relationships as well, and divorce and breakdowns. And we've got all of these issues that people have. And I think that it's great to share it. So what I do recommend, I don't know how you feel about this, is work cafes. So basically it's like, you might only first of all get a couple of people there, but just saying we've got a health cafe going, it's Wednesday night after work, 5:00, bring biscuits, bring, hot chocolate, bring donuts or whatever, and share them. And at first there may only be a couple of people there, but when they come in the breakout area and see those couple of people there with cakes, what are you doing? Yeah. And we're getting together, and there's a lot of people out there that are lonely, and we don't know that they're lonely. And I think that would create that openness in the workplace that establishes the stepping stones, I think, for everybody to be able to open up. And in the pandemic, actually, spoke about the health cafes and on my webinars have said, set them up. You can do them virtually. You can do it for remote workers. And so many people have given positive advice, positive remarks back and said that it's really worked within the companies and they've carried them on. What are the techniques? So we've got obviously being open to your employer, the conversations, the health cafes, if you like, or the get-togethers. What other things that would you have in the workplace to help people?
Of course, no.
And get them to create that openness.
Yeah, of course. I mean, wellbeing days is always a good suggestion to offer a complete day in the week, perhaps Wellbeing Wednesday, just to go with that alliteration there. For example, to allow your employees to come to a designated person perhaps and just to be able to have 5-10 minutes just to talk about what is indeed going on for themselves, promote that as a safe, confidential space that no information will indeed be shared after that then, to have that secure and comfortable space for them to be able to take some time out of their workplace day and indeed just disclose what's going on outside, as it were.
Yeah. And I think, it's, like I said, it's inevitable that people will bring the personal life into work. We're going to, and some people can hide it, can't they? And for some, it's just hard to really hold it in. And eventually they can have burnout, or they can just have, stress-related illness maybe, or even just show emotion at work. And so spotting the signs as well of those people, we've got we always say, explosions of anger or withdrawing. If somebody is maybe struggling, what would you say the signs are? And I know it's not one size fits all, is it?
Of course. No, definitely not one size fits all. People can mask very well in nowadays, and people can go days without talking about what's going on for them and then just be uncomfortably sitting in that without anyone actually knowing otherwise. But I would always suggest that idea of really listening in on the how are you questions that you would hear on a daily basis. This is not only advice for employers, but employees as well that are just sitting with something to actively really listen in on when they're asked, how are you doing today? Because it's a question that we hear almost every single day. But I think it's very commonly known as that most deflected question ever, because we say, I'm fine, how are you? We pushed it to one side, we pushed it away. But in actual fact, if we just encourage ourselves to maybe begin to sit in that question, ask ourselves, how are we doing today? And because it's something that we don't necessarily give time for, and once we've sat in that, we've identified what's going on for us, to perhaps offer that person that's asked a piece of that. Actually, I am pretty stressed today. Actually, I am feeling a little bit sad. I know it may seem to be downplaying it quite massively at times, but it's still offering that piece. And what we hope that does is then opens up that dialogue.
Yeah, in our family, we ask the question, how's your day been? So that people go, oh, well, actually, start with, you talk about it, and what do you, and try and pick out the good bits as well. What do you have for lunch? What did you do? And I think that's something that maybe we should change the question. How are you? How's your day been so far? And then it sort of gives people, makes people think about it, doesn't it?
It does.
But I think that we've got to train ourselves, I think, within the workplace to be more open with our staff, because a happy workforce is a productive workforce. And I really wouldn't want any member of my staff coming into work and feeling happy. I'd like to think that they could come to me for a solution. And I think on that note, actually, I think that many employers should have access to, obviously, a helpline, but also the other things like knowing where to sort of lead people to and pinpoint them to, and the support organisations out there. And the more we talk about the issues and have like those health cafes, the more that people will trust the employer, the more they'll trust. If I work with you, I'd say, Stephen, actually, can I have a word? I've got this issue at the minute, I hope you don't mind, and speak to you about it. And also, if you are a company, you can get specialist people in to talk about money, for example, can't you? And mortgages or rent or whatever, can't you?
Exactly. And that's why, at Health Job, we have those designated people in terms of the legal and financial advisors. So that is part of some people's EAP service. So that is also a designated person that people can indeed begin to discuss those things with, because like you said, it is a taboo subject now.
It is, yeah. Even embarrassed, aren't they? They're ashamed. And I think we try and teach them good habits, and we can help that. And I know, for example, I can talk about this because I know they do it, but the credit unions, they're brilliant, because what they do is they teach you to, when you borrow money from them, they save a little bit back for you. So it teaches you good habits. You might need that money, but it's going to teach you to save as well. So we can teach ourselves techniques. And I think that it's really important, I think, to understand that we are all vulnerable. We might be tough outside, but we are vulnerable, and that we want people to be happy, and we want to create that openness. Is there any other things that you would say to an employer, apart from, have empathy, have the workshops, have the pinpoints, have the advice line? What other things would you suggest?
Of course. For employers as well, it's also important that they're looking after themselves as well. I do find, I know we just touched upon it before, but, the idea of making sure that they're okay before they can support other people is so essential. You mentioned that word vulnerable, and that's such an important word to maybe utilize here, because vulnerability is important. I know at some times it can be seen as that, seemingly as that, weak word, in a sense, we're weak and we're vulnerable and things like that, but actually it's one of the greatest shows of strength we can provide ourselves, that ability to lift that mask and actually understand that maybe we're not doing as well as we had hoped for or anything like that. So to make sure that employers are checking in with themselves as well, making sure that they're utilising services or utilising their own mental health well-being and things like that, to ensure that they can provide that support for the individuals as well.
I think as well, what's very, very important, somebody's opened up to you, it's to check back in with them, isn't it? Because you can't just leave them to get, they've opened up. I've spoken before about where I broke down in work before through lots of things that were going on, and broke down in front of the company accountant. And it was because I didn't have anywhere to turn, I didn't have anywhere to go, and I just cried my eyes out. And then the accountant said, you tried the employee assistance program? I was like, what? And it's going to help you. And it was absolutely brilliant, because you've got somebody that listens, but also points you in the right direction of the support that you need. I actually went to see a counsellor in the end, and that was the best thing I ever did. And it helped me solve the issue that I couldn't see myself getting out of. There were several issues, but it really helped. And I think that a lot of people out there have all these facilities, but let's not have them shoved in a drawer. Let's make sure people have their membership numbers. Let's make sure people know how to access it. And the other thing I would say is do staff surveys. Find out what your staff are feeling. Are you happy? What makes this job enjoyable? Is there anything we can do better? What do our competitors do that's better? And it all adds to this enjoyment, this trust, doesn't it? So I think that we're creating this open communication and trust, but I think one of the hardest things is to encourage that open dialogue continually. Do you have any tips there?
Yeah, so to practice that empathy, wherever you are really, whether that be at work, at home, like you said, it doesn't just stop at work. No. The concerns will be ongoing, and indeed to make sure that we are indeed openly communicating to other people. Communication is so key as well, and that can be done through anyone, and really listening on that, how are you, or how's your day been question, and that sort of thing, and give the honest answer, practice that congruency there, as it were, because, it is going to be an ongoing factor for some people, and they may need that support elsewhere as well.
Yeah. How has your day been, Stephen?
My day's been okay.
Has it?
Yeah, it's been actually really good. Got up quite early this morning, so
a lot done.
Yes, I did. Yeah,
you feel accomplished then, don't you?
I do indeed.
See how that question changes. How's your day been? So far, so it means a lot, doesn't it? I care. I'm asking you because I care, and I'm actually interested. And that's you don't ask that question. Just go, you all right? Yeah. There's an interest to it. I'm actually interested, and that creates that engagement. So that's something that's missing in a lot of businesses, is that people don't engage, and also at home as well. So we're so used to people being around us, and but taking time to think about the question, ask the question, and listen.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel that there's a sense of expectation in the workplace as well. When we go to work, we keep calm, we carry on, we do what we need to do. We obviously finish the day and then we go home. We fall into that routine. But at times when people are struggling, they may not be able to keep up with that expectation. But then they are almost seemingly in this idea that we just have to get on with it. But in actual fact, you don't have to. If your employer is willing to listen, if you have that Wellbeing Cafe, if you have Wellbeing Wednesdays or anything like that, do reach out, because, if you're struggling, then ask for that support.
Yeah. And we come from, I think in the UK, we're very, stiff upper lip and, least said, soonest mended attitude, shh, don't think about it, shove it under the carpet. We've got to change that. We've got to help people. Mental health is huge for businesses. We need to concentrate and focus on it and help our staff. Always ask, don't I, what's your words of wisdom this week?
So when we are truly heard by someone that doesn't necessarily look to take responsibility, that doesn't look to try and mould us in a sense, and really truly hears us, it feels damn good.
Oh, that's lovely. That's really brilliant, isn't it? I hear you. I hear everybody. Don't you as well? So
exactly.
Thank you very much for joining me.